Hey folks, I want to let you know about one of my favorite sponsors of the show, AppFigures. AppFigures is the leading platform for mobile app makers to track and grow their apps. It's packed with tools for reporting, optimization, and competitive intelligence. If you're making money with subscriptions, you need to know how to stay on top of those numbers, and AppFigures is definitely going to be the way to go. They have some great tutorials and articles at appfigures.com that you can check out to help you get started on what you can do to help optimize your app. They also have a really good YouTube channel you can check out where they do things like This Week in Apps, where Ariel gives you updates on what's going on with the App Store, as well as live keyword takedown. So you can see how your app maybe could best optimize what keywords it uses. It's really easy to integrate with your app, and it's really easy to get started. So go ahead, go to appfigures.com and use the special code EMPOWER3030 to get 30% off for the next 3 months. There's no reason for you to just go ahead and give this a try. Again, EMPOWER3030, go sign up and use the code and get 30% off for the next 3 months. Also, take some time, check out the episode I did a few months ago with Ariel. He really knows his stuff and he knows what he's doing. So you'll definitely want to check that episode out. Again, once you've checked that out, you got a good idea on what to do with the App Store, then use the special code so you can get the reports you need from AppFigures. Use the code EMPOWER3030, get 30% off. Thank you so much to AppFigures for sponsoring today's episode. Welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dion. Today, I am once again joined with Peter Witham, host of Compile Swift, for our annual WWDC Hoopla Part 2, Section 4, Year 2022 State of the Union piece. So, before we begin, if you did not listen to it, we already talked about the keynote. Go to Peter's podcast, compileswift.com, and check out that episode first if you want the user-friendly version of what we're about to talk today. Peter, I'll let you introduce yourself before we get started.
Great. Thank you. Hello, Leo, and hello, everybody. I am Peter Witham. You probably know me as Compile Swift at compileswift.com and all over the place. And of course, on my yearly gathering with Leo, you know, Apple does this just for us when we appreciate it. But I make apps and try to spread knowledge far and wide, and that's what I do.
All right. Before we get started, give me your overall, in one sentence, describe the State of the Union.
A good year for developers, probably.
That's fair. That's fair. I like that. And why do you say...
I tried to keep it as
Why do you say
short.
good year? Why do you say good year for developers? And then why do you say probably?
I think...
What is the...
Yeah.
Where does the positivity come from? And then where does the hesitation come from?
So the positivity comes from, as I was watching State of the Union, every other time it seemed to be someone would say new API, which is always a good thing, right? So that's where the positive side comes from. And just from some of the things that I've seen. The cautious side comes from that thing of, okay, but now I need to spend the following days reading the small print that Apple didn't tell us about.
Or
so that's kind of my
Xcode
two sides of
when
it.
you try to do it. Or like you follow the tutorial and it works fine, but then when you want to change that one little thing and Xcode crashes and you get like the blue screen of death or whatever on your macOS Ventura machine.
Be wary of the tutorial that says, and at this point, Xcode should crash and you need to reopen it.
I built this great smoothie app, and then I added avocados, and the whole app just crashed. Darn you, Fruta app.
Yeah. Well, this year we moved on to an unhealthy donut, didn't we?
Oh, is that what it is? Nice.
Yeah. This year for the charts and everything was a donut. I'm like, this is a step backwards.
It's just like we're so sick of like staying at home all the time. We just want donuts.
Yeah, I don't need any more smoothies, please.
So, okay, first thing I want to mention is we finally got pricing and availability for Xcode Cloud. Peter, what did you think?
And
what did you think?
Good.
What did you think of the price?
Okay, so first of all, I will say thank you, Apple. You did give us a free tier, sort of, because I really didn't expect there to be one. So that's good, right? Now, interestingly, I do want to say here, as we were doing, as they were talking about Xcode and the Xcode Cloud in the State of the Union, that was when I got the email to tell me that essentially, don't worry about your application for the beta that we never gave you. We're now just going to give you the full thing.
Okay.
But I think the tiers are good. I feel that it's a structured approach that does work out for essentially the independent developer and then stepping up through the levels. Because I think, would it be fair to say, for any company on any plans, but for something like this, those higher levels are really pointed at essentially bigger companies that will pay those tiers, right?
While we're talking, I'm like pulling up my GitLab account because I'm like curious how many hours, because I know I use more than 25 hours a month. Let's see, where am I? Activity? No, where's it? Like my account?
And so we should say that yes, the free plan from Apple is 25 hours a month. Up until I think it was December of 23, I think it was.
December of 2023. So basically like 18 months.
2023, yeah. Yeah, so that is certainly enough time to figure out whether you want to use this thing or not.
Right.
But will the free one go away after that? That's a question.
So I have used 275 minutes in June. That's
that's June only?
Yeah.
Or up until June?
No, June until today. So like I run the pipeline quite a bit, but like I don't know, like that's 25 hours per month is not a lot of time, unless these things are like really fast, and maybe this is faster than my Fastlane build. That I don't think that's going to get you a lot. Like I'm just kind of skeptical about that, just knowing how many minutes that's minutes. That's minutes.
Yeah,
gosh,
minutes.
I'm so dumb.
Yeah.
I should use the math. So 275 divided by 60 is 4 hours. So yeah, 25 hours a month. That should be plenty. Cut that. Change that. I meant to say, wow, 25 hours per month is a lot. Yeah, no, that is a lot. Yeah, okay.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
No, that should, in theory. I think what the recommended thing people would have to do here is take your longest building app, put it up there and see what it takes.
Yeah, right. And like so for me, like the whole thing with Xcode Cloud, as cool as it is like, I don't want to be locked into anything. Like that's the thing that scares me. It's the same thing with like web hosting, where it's like, oh yeah, just throw it up on Amazon or throw it up on whatever, Google or whatever. Like I just want to I don't want to be in a locked in system. And like the benefit of something like Fastlane, for instance, is that like I don't have to like be on Apple's thing. I could go to GitLab, I could go to GitHub, I could I don't know. Does Bitbucket work? I don't know. I don't even know if they have pipelines now. But anyways, point being is like I don't want to be locked into any system and then be dependent on it. Kind of in the same way with web hosting. So like that's more of my hesitation with Xcode Cloud. I think if you're starting off, I think it's great. I think you should definitely like if you don't have anything, I think it's better than nothing. But like, yeah, it is I am locked into a system and I can't get out of it. Whereas if I go with something like GitLab or GitHub and then hook up Fastlane, then like I have the benefits and the versatility of being able to take my stuff anywhere.
Well, the other option here, of course, would be that you go get, one of these services that'll offer you a Mac or whatever. Right. Probably a Mac is what you're going to want for this. And you build your own. Right.
We were just talking.
You'll still be locked into whatever software you put on.
Right. So that's what I do. I have GitLab and then I use we talked last episode, I bought a Mac Mini. It was like $500, $600. I don't know. Like that's not a lot for a Mac. And I use that for my CI stuff. And like, it's awesome. It's a great setup. And it's like, that doesn't use any of my minutes because it's my machine. And all I have to do is run the GitLab runner and I'm good to go. So, yeah.
Well, that's actually a good point. If you that's actually a different way to think about this too. If you can calculate what you think, how many minutes would I use right now based on what I've built or will build, extrapolate that over a year, maybe the cheaper option is go buy yourself a Mac Mini, put it in a cupboard somewhere at home and
do the math.
Do your own thing. And like you and I have said, you still got a Mac to use for other things at that point.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
You haven't used Xcode Cloud, have you?
They still didn't give me an invite, and now they just tell me it's there.
I haven't used it.
I will be trying it.
Okay. Well, when eventually we'll be talking.
I do know someone. Yeah, I do know someone who has used it, and actually they said their review was, it worked out good. It was straightforward, and I really don't feel I have a use for it. So that was straight from someone who was using it for regular builds. But I think you and I will probably definitely be having a future conversation of, now that we've both used it, what do we think of this? Because I want to try it out for sure. Yeah. So
one of the big things I noticed, they talked about, I think it was like visions and platforms section, or visions for platforms. Mm-hmm. It was interesting how they called out like old technologies. And what I mean by that is they specifically talked about how like we used to do things with Objective-C and Interface Builder and UI Kit and App Kit, and they're here to stay, but the future, they made it absolutely clear, as clear as they could, that SwiftUI and Swift and I don't know what else they talked about. Did they mention Swift Package Manager? They did, but I don't know if they mentioned it's the future.
They did.
But they did clearly say this is the old stuff. And we can talk about the talks. There are a couple talks. There's actually one talk that mentions Objective-C, surprisingly enough, but it's like compiling apps in Objective-C and C and C++ and et cetera. It's like not really focused on Objective-C, but it definitely is I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. This is the old stuff. This is the new stuff. The old stuff's not going away, but it is the old stuff. That definitely is the impression I got from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Previous years, they've tried to give the very subtle. Do you remember when we went? They tried to move us all away before they said new devices were coming, and they're like, "Hey, you shouldn't build for a specific screen size anymore," but we don't want to say why. Right. And then, so we've had that kind of thing for a couple of years, right? Hey, Swift is mature, SwiftUI isn't, but you really should think about that. This year was clearly, look, we're giving you one last chance, right, to switch over before we tell you, you must now switch. And in a way, it was funny because they did say, it's bad when they say Objective-C and that's not going away, but really we don't want you to please stop using it. Right, exactly. And so it is interesting. And don't get me wrong, as someone who loves Swift and is embracing SwiftUI and getting to like it more. It's good to hear, but at the same time, I know that I still have Objective-C apps that I have to work on, so any company-based app or something like that, it's not going to go away overnight. It's still going to be around for a while, but I guess we're probably at that point where we won't be getting those yearly, we've done this for Objective-C
anymore. We're not getting another Objective-C talk. We're not going to get another, last year, at least last year with group activities / SharePlay, we did not get a new API for Objective-C. Widget Kit, which we'll talk about later, is another big thing this year. Mm-hmm. That was never in Objective-C because it's based on SwiftUI. I mean, there's a ton of new APIs in the last few years that are totally dedicated to Swift and Swift exclusively. So, yeah.
Oh, it's totally where they want you to go. And I get it. And I think that it's probably about time, right? I think we all look at it. If we think about when we're working on our own apps and you say to yourself, do I have to do another year of legacy support? And I don't think it's unfair to say at some point, look, we're not going to kill off Objective-C, but we're not going to actively develop it again. Right. So, I mean, I get it.
Stay tuned if you're interested in migrating your Objective-C code. Stay tuned. I have a project I'm working on. So just want to let you know, seriously. I do think
All
that
right.
there's an audience of folks who are interested in getting off of Objective-C, like purposefully getting off of Objective-C. So stay tuned. It's definitely in my definitely in my radar to put out some stuff on that.
Great. If you could just come around to my office and rewrite my stuff for me, that'd be great. Okay. You know, just save me the trouble. Yeah.
So I'm looking at the videos. They put out the videos already. Not the videos, but the titles, right? There's not an Objective-C talk, but there is a C++ talk.
Okay.
Funny enough. Simplify C++ templates with concepts. So which I guess is a C++ 20 thing. C++ does update every so often. So take that, Java developers. But the reason I had thought that there was an Objective-C talk was because one of the Q&A, either their digital lounge on Slack or their related labs, is C++, Objective-C, compiler, analyzer, sanitizer, debugger, and linker lab. So that's why I thought there was something related to Objective-C, but it's just Objective-C is just lumped with all these big, massive old languages that people still write libraries for, and for good reason. I have no complaints. I'm just saying, it's not really highlighted.
Yeah, they should really just abbreviate the name of that talk to the other stuff, right? This is the other stuff session. Well,
I don't want to get into AppKit and UIKit yet. We'll get into that when we talk about SwiftUI, but I do want to talk about. They did talk about server APIs. So Apple has had server APIs for store. Was it StoreKit, right? Or not StoreKit, but whatever, App Store. There's the stuff we talked about, Fastlane. There's the stuff that Fastlane hooks up to. There's the StoreKit stuff that you can hook up to and have, what's it called? What's it called when you call somebody a webhook? And they have had,
webhook,
there's the Cloud Kit has its JS library, Music Kit has its JS library, but these were specifically mentioned in the State of the Union. We had Weather Kit, which Novell had talked about, which is obviously comes from their buyout of what's their face. I forgot the name of the weather app. Do you remember? Dark Sky.
Dark Sky. That's the one. I was going to say Carrot, but that's the other one. Right. Yeah, but Dark Sky.
And MapKit. MapKit server API for geocoding and stuff like that. So that I thought was really cool, that they're realizing that maybe we do need a solid server API. I mean, they are a services company now, right? So they don't just they don't just sell episodes. They don't just sell episodes of that soccer show and the one with the brain thing. Ted Lasso and Severance. They do more. They do more services than that. So, I don't know. What did you think of those?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that, like you say, it got a mention in the State of the Union, not because these things aren't important, but perhaps just the opposite. They now feel they're important enough to mention in the State of the Union. Because, for example, you mentioned the MapKit one. I did a MapKit application this year and was very pleasantly surprised how very straightforward it was to work with it. So I, for one, am actually pretty excited to see some of these other ones, like the weather one, for example. I mean, of course, we'll now see another, million weather apps, but the fact that they're recognizing, more of these services APIs from their servers, I would much rather call these services from Apple than some random place on the internet, right? So I think it's a good thing. I think it's good to see it in there. Maybe this is a sign. I would also like to be hopeful and say, ooh, are you now going to be doing more Swift server-based stuff? I know you're a big fan of that,
right?
Vapor and all those kind of things. And I'd love to see Apple do some more of that to point out to folks who may not be aware that, things like Swift and that, no, there are server-side components to these things. And I think that this services is a good way to get people used to that idea.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great way. I mean, I used to be a big developer of Map apps pre-iPhone, I guess. the old virtual Earth, whatever the Microsoft thing was called, because they kept changing the name.
Oh gosh.
So I know map stuff.
Yeah,
pretty
that takes
well.
me back.
Yeah, right. I know map stuff pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's like it's really good to see that MapKit continue to mature there. Anything else on the server API stuff?
No, I think it's just good to see it right up there in the forefront for folks who may not even be aware of these things to start looking into them and asking questions rather than a secondary thought of, oh yeah, we do some server stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's always good to see those things brought to the front. Of course, some of these, like you say, were through acquisitions, but either way, the fact that Apple recognizes them enough to put them in the State of the Union, I feel is important.
Yeah, agreed. Have you done any development with like shortcuts or app intents or Siri or any of that stuff?
I've done some shortcuts. I sort of played around with the shortcuts a little bit. And I waited until we got it on the Mac last year because I really, my thing was always, look, I love using them on my iPad and on my iPhone. I hate building them on the iPad and the iPhone. So the fact that I could do it on the Mac was like, okay, now I'm going to take this seriously. And with some of the newer things that we're going to talk about later on, shortcuts is now becoming more and more important because it's going to be that much easier for developers to make their apps work with shortcuts with very little to no pain.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's
something I'm very interested in.
They've had that, what is it, NS user activity stuff out for quite a while as a way to do like continuity between different operating systems using the same app. The thing where I flip my wrist, I see the calendar, and all of a sudden the calendar with the little watch icon shows up on my Mac, right? Like that kind of thing. And I've never dabbled with it, but it sure seems like it's been super important, and I just haven't had like time to invest in it. And like I feel like Apple's like, guys, come on, use this. This is really important for the future. You need to you need to implement it. We're going to make it even easier for you to implement it with things like this. This new as a app intents API. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
and stuff like that. And it seems like
was it app intents API, app intents something,
right?
Yeah,
right.
But yes, yeah, and I think that's a very interesting step forward because if you can remove the pain for people to set this up in their apps, they're absolutely more likely to do it, right? And I know some folks with apps who have great apps, and I often say to them, it's like, oh, I just wish you'd make this accessible in shortcuts and I can automate this stuff, right? Because that's kind of one of my things too. And I think over time now, as it becomes easier, a lot of folks are looking to automate things or play around with this. And you and I were speaking previously about some email and moving it around the system and everything else. This would be great to do all of this through shortcuts with these API intents and so on. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the bulk of the stuff coming out with Swift. I think this is going to be 5.7 that comes out with Xcode 14.
I think so.
Yeah. And what's funny about Swift stuff is like, not so much Swift UI, but Swift for sure. Like, if you've been following like various proposals and how those have flowed, like this stuff has been in development. So of all the things that Apple reveals, this is the thing that like it's kind of been public knowledge for a while, but now we get to actually see these cool presentations and sessions on it, and it's coming to Xcode. But we've got the first one I wanted to talk about that they mentioned was regex, and like we finally have robust regular expression support in Swift. That's not like the janky Objective-C NS regular expression stuff that we've had for a while. Do you want to talk about that, I guess?
Yeah. This actually made me happy because I am not the world's worst at regex, but I'm definitely not some kind of guru. And I know that a lot of the time I end up writing a lot of code for things that regex could do for me. But up until now, it has always felt like I got to jump over 10 hurdles to get to the last 3, whereas, okay, and then I got it working, but now having regex support directly in Swift, I actually think is probably a bigger deal than it seems to me right now.
Right.
Because yes, like even the brief examples they gave in the State of the Union, immediately, hopefully, people saw it and realized this is actually a very important deal to have this in there. So many people write stuff via regex in other languages, and now we can finally do it as a kind of a sensible sort of first user experience, as opposed to, like you say, a bunch of janky code to kind of make it work and this and
I mean,
everything
like
else.
implicit,
Just
like
give it
anytime
to us
I have
like
to
you
put an
have.
implicit optional, I feel like implicit or explicit. And I always get those two confused. Anytime I have to put an exclamation mark and it's not a not, then that's not a good sign. So yeah.
Once you have to start, like, if you stand on your left foot and wave your right arm, I might figure out if this is any good as a regular expression. Now it's just going to tell you, and perhaps more importantly, let's not forget, it's going to give you, it's going to highlight in Xcode in the editor how this is working for you.
Right.
So if you're having problems writing the
when he was
regular
showing that off,
expression,
I'm like,
you're going to
that's
see
awesome.
it there.
That is awesome. That's what we need.
Yeah. Yeah, no more going to these websites and having to paste in examples and regex and see if it works. Just do it in Xcode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, if they could only add that for date formatting, that'd be great.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be heaven? Next year,
right?
They'll be like, "We gave you regex. What more do you want?"
We give you we'll give you a date formatter, but unfortunately, you have to use our AR glasses in order to really take advantage of it.
Yeah. I'll live with that.
So regex, and then have you played around with the any? Is it the any keyword? You know what I'm talking about? So like.
Yeah, I do.
I finally got it.
Really...
Like I haven't touched it yet. But I finally got it when he was like, "Oh, you know how you have to like use where statements in order to specify a specific type? It's like, oh, you just use any now." I was like, "Oh, well, that makes a lot more sense." Have you?
Yeah, and I was gonna say it's funny because I thought that I was doing things. I don't want to say wrong, but. It was like, I thought I must be wrong when I'm putting in any, because it's like saying, I don't know, so just make it any. Right. Turns out, maybe I wasn't as wrong as I thought I was. So you're quite right. It's like, oh, I think I get it now. You know when you feel like you've been slapping yourself on the wrist and now you realize that you really didn't need to.
Right.
You just needed someone to tell you it was okay.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I haven't used it a lot. Other than because it's my go-to kind of like, I don't know. If I put any, does it make the compiler happy? Yes, it does. Okay, I'm going with that.
I'm so used to doing it the other way that I don't think I would use any because I know how to do it now. But if you're a new developer, use any. Like, it's just so much easier to understand what the heck is going on.
Well, it always felt like it was kind of that thing of like, don't force unwrap the optional, but yet everybody force unwraps the optional.
Right. Exactly.
It's like everybody uses the any, but nobody says that they use any.
Nice.
Right.
What else do you want to talk about that's new to Swift?
Well, there is the async algorithms, which I'm not sure I fully get because I haven't really used the async await too much other than playing with it. Only because I knew that it was something I couldn't really implement into the apps that I work on yet because of, the OS versions that it worked with. But that said, this year, now that we're 2 versions into, essentially 15, 16, and it's going to be acceptable to use async await. So this async algorithms has me curious.
I mean,
have you looked at this at all?
TLDR it's async functional programming, right? So like where you would use like map or reduce or compact map, flat map, whatever. You now have an async way to execute that and take advantage of all the processors as opposed to doing it single threaded, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's grab 4 items out of the array. Let's do whatever operation. Like let's grab 7 items out of the array at the same time because Leo has a Mac Studio with a M1 Ultra. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
It's like now you can do a bunch of items simultaneously in an array at the same time and save you a bunch of time and energy, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Sort of a save yourself some calculation time and reduce the risk that you're going to foolishly lock up
or
your
at least
UI,
do it the most optimal way, right?
Yeah. So anytime that if they can provide us a library of just standard things, great. I'm all for that. I have no doubt that the Apple engineers know way better about optimizing this stuff than I do. So I'm happy to use.
They just go next door to the people who make the chips and be like, "Hey, is this the right way to do it?" It's like, no. Yeah, they know.
Could you throw another core in there? Yeah. That's when you know it's bad, right? When they're like, we've got a core for machine learning, we've got a core for for loops, we've got a
core for live preview on Xcode. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's at least a 5-core deal right there.
And 12 cores for teams.
Yeah.
Anything else regarding Swift before we jump into SwiftUI?
No, I think that, the part of the interesting thing is because of the Swift language now being separate, essentially from yearly releases, a lot of the time we, like you mentioned, we know about a lot of these things as we get here, and it's sort of Apple just giving it an official seal of approval. So, anytime we see these kind of additions to Swift, I think they're a good thing.
Okay, SwiftUI. The first thing I want to talk about,
yes, my favorite,
is we had WidgetKit 2 years ago. That's 2020 iOS.
Maybe
13 or
1. No, maybe it was 2.
It's gotta be 2.
Yeah. Yeah, could be.
So WidgetKit,
because of the watch,
definitely
right?
felt like it was built with the knowledge that they've built up from custom complications on the watch. It's essentially custom complications on the phone. That's essentially what it is. It has a timeline. It has all nearly the same API, right? So now it seems like they're merging the two together, and basically you can build complications, correct me if I'm wrong, audience members, using WidgetKit, right? Like, so now you could just use the same API for building complications and building widgets on the home screen, which I think is really nice. And like complications are really hard to make. And I think there's a bigger audience of people who know how to make widgets, because there's a bigger audience of people making iPhone apps for hundreds of reasons. So, I mean, for me as a watch developer, I've never built a complication. I never felt the need to, but I don't know. I'm like 10% more interested in building a complication if I can find the right watch app for it. Like, it seems like it's a little bit easier now with widgets. People love building widgets. So I don't know. What is it? Am I in the right? I'm in the right direction, I guess.
Well, I think, I mean, that's my take on it too, right? I think we kind of maybe sensed a bit of this was coming once we finally got our widgets on the home screen for iOS. That, okay, we're going to see some steps forward in this over the years, hopefully, this being one of those years. And I think anytime you have something like WidgetKit, where, a developer can essentially learn once, deploy many, right? In many ways, the watch and the iPhone, and especially with the changes to the iPhone home screen, as well. Widgets are going to be an important thing. I think if you want to have a really, I don't want to say successful or popular, but if you want people to get the most from your app, whether it's on the watch, on the iPhone, or whatever, you really have to start taking widgets seriously at this point. And so, give me a widget kit. I can learn it once, kind of like the SwiftUI thing. And of course, part of that being this whole, you got to do it with SwiftUI. Okay, great. But then if you're going to solve a lot of the problems for me under the hood, then absolutely I'll do that and start making widgets.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Especially with some of the SwiftUI stuff we'll probably talk about shortly as well that we get this year.
Well, I guess speaking of, so we talked about in the previous part about the keynote, you got the new lock screen. Lock screen now has widgets on it. Lock screen also has this idea of live activities. Now, I'm really curious about this API, because if you know anything about widgets and complications, you're supposed to kind of give them the information ahead of time. How does that work? I'm really curious how that works with live activity, like, is there some sort of notification system if like a score changes and then it updates the screen properly? Like, I'm really curious about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm thinking, on the surface as I look at it, there's got to be some kind of polling that goes on in the background
Right.
at maybe set intervals, or you get to set the interval. Because, yes, the only other way would be the widget would have to be listening for notifications of changes and then update itself, which I guess depending on what the widget is as to which one is the more power friendly. Certainly it would seem like don't do anything until you've got the notification. But there are some instances where you're going to want a more, I don't want to say real time, but not every couple of minutes update, right? Like, especially if it's if you're going crazy with trying to complete your circles for your, activities or something like that, you're going to want to see that a lot more regular than you're going to want every minute or something like that. So it'd be interesting to get into the details of that and see what options we have for updating those, quote, live widgets, right?
Right.
Certainly for me, I can tell you now, I was happy because I thought, oh, I finally can stop having to open and refresh web pages to see when my food's going to get delivered.
Right.
Immediately, I'm like, that is a one widget that's going on my home screen straight away.
I mean, it is. Yeah. It's really useful to have that on there. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, and especially too if you can, I guess it's a marginal use case, but I could see that maybe you might want to use that for some custom third-party messaging app if you didn't want to go the notification route or something. I don't know, but be interesting to see. I think this is going to be one of those where you got to let the developers play for a little while to see all the things.
That's a really
that nobody
good point,
though,
because you have notifications. There are use cases where notifications simply aren't enough and you need streaming data. And I think that's where that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Now, how far can you take that? Can you put a video in that box? I'm not so sure they'd let you do that because they want to save battery. Because if in some future iPhone that has no off screen, then that would suck battery like crazy. Yep. So I'm sure there's like frame rate limitations and things like that to it. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, good point.
And this is clearly what they learned. You and I were talking about this earlier about taking what they've learned from the watch to the phone, from the phone to the watch, from the phone to the Mac and Mac to the phone and so on. This is a good example of one of those, I think. You and I were talking about this earlier. It's like, well, this must be, where the always on iPhone screen is going to go, right, for these widgets. So I think you're absolutely right. And that's why it'll be interesting to see what details we have for that. Maybe if I had been sensible enough to have looked into widgets on the on the watch, I may have realized already how this was going to work. Now I feel like I need to go back and look at that.
Right.
But I think that there's a good opportunity. What I'm worried about is with with notifications, apps abusing this. I hope there's
how would you
some kind of rules
because you can
place,
just remove it, right, or disable it or remove that.
Well, you could. Yes, you could. That's a good point. You can remove it. But what I'm thinking a widget that I want to have and I need to have for something. And then next thing you know, it starts getting, being used for things that it didn't need to be used for. Like, for example, I'm sure we've all experienced this now, notifications on your phone, on your Mac and everything for just the most ridiculous things. And it's like, this is never meant to be designed for this. And I got an option. I either live with it or I turn it off.
You know what would be worse?
But I have legitimate use cases I want it on.
You know where I could see it be worse is like, what if you had a live activity on an app and they're like, you need this live activity enabled. If you don't enable it, you don't get 25% off at so-and-so store. Like,
don't even suggest that to people.
Yeah. I guess Apple wouldn't allow that crap. But you can see somebody trying to sneak that through.
Yeah. All right, folks, just for the record, it was Leo that said that. You can blame him. I had no business being
somebody
involved
else
with
would
that
come up with that idea. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's a couple of
Yeah.
things in SwiftUI we have this year, new APIs. I've not had the chance to look at one, which we talked about in the last episode with Majid that he wanted, and it seems like we kind of are moving in that direction. Was this idea of like a compositional layout? He put that he had that on his wish list, and he called it. Well, the two things that we called out, compositional layout and SwiftUI navigation, but I want to cover the compositional layout side of it. Do you understand what we're getting? Because it seems really powerful, and Majid explained it pretty darn well, and it seems like it's kind of like the declarative way of doing a collection view, where it's essentially not like just grid, but I think it's called grid essentially. But like you can really like say I want a 4x4 here, a 1x1 there, a 2x2 here. You know, and then you could like arrange the layout in a much more, I don't know, robust fashion, kind of like what we can do with collection views now.
Right. I mean, I actually saw it as, I took it as two separate things. I took the grid as being, you know, basically a new layout component that we have, which I'm fantastically excited to see, because that applies to so many apps. Right. Especially, you know, ones with data. I mean, the grid is going to be fantastic. And then this compositional kind of custom one, which maybe I misunderstood, an audience, please let us know. If I'm right, I think I almost feel like I can't be right because it's too good, which is a complete custom layout to do whatever we want, which would be living the dream. Right. I mean, that would be fantastic, but I almost can't believe it because it's like, how did you pull that off?
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to see a session that says this is how we made this happen.
Well, we don't have that session, but we do have a
fascinating.
session on,
You know.
if I can copy the link, but there is Compose custom layouts with SwiftUI that should be out on the 8th. But that'll break that down pretty intensely, I would imagine. More so than stacks, grids, and outlines. I think it's going to
be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, grids pretty self-explanatory, right? We've all seen grids on other platforms, and how sort of that works. Extremely useful. This whole compositional custom thing, I think this could be a whole, if it does work, as I understand it, this could be a whole new level of UI experience, you know. And immediately I thought of a few things that's like, oh, this is something I've always wanted to do in an app. So be interesting to see, but I really want to dive into that and see. Be interesting to see as well what the human interface guidelines has to say about that, being something that could be that open-ended.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What was I going to say?
I certainly didn't see that one coming. That's for sure.
Yeah. You know? I mean, I've been talking about how I've been doing a lot of like, what do you call it? Web development, and how much I would like it, unfortunately, especially with Tailwind. And like when I jump into SwiftUI, I just feel like I'm having a fight. And you know, if they can give me a way to do what I want to do and design it multi-platform in a responsive way, that would be awesome. So I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah, I'm a Tailwind user as well.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's almost, you know, now that you mention it and I think about it, this is almost a hybrid kind of next level flex grid approach, if you want to think about it in those terms.
Right. That's exactly what I think it is.
Which is what a fantastic thing to have. I mean, that would be phenomenal, you know.
So the other thing that I'm not as hopeful on, just based on what I've seen so far, is the new navigation stuff. I don't understand. I haven't looked at it, just based on tweets. There's a talk called SwiftUI Cookbook for navigation. It doesn't seem like there's too much, like, it isn't still quite as powerful as people would want it to be. It's kind of what it looks like to me. I just don't get that impression. And I don't, honestly, we don't have a talk on navigation. So it's all like kind of, Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see, but I don't think we're getting a lot in navigation.
Yeah, no, I got all excited because I'll give you an example here. And because I thought at first, oh, this may solve a problem for me. And that's fantastic. So the scenario would be this. I worked on an app recently. You have the login screen where you don't want any navigation, right? They either successfully log in or they don't. But after that, I want to go to a tabbed navigation. And that's all well and good going in that direction. But then when you want to log out or you log someone out and you've got to go back out of that tabbed navigation back to a single view, things get a little complicated. Mm-hmm. And so I got all excited with this new navigation. And then, like you say, as I read a little bit, I was like, okay, maybe I've given it too much credit because I'm not understanding what it's really giving me here beyond what I already have.
Right.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, haven't got enough into it. I wonder, though, if something like this and then it doesn't get a session, you think to yourself, well, it can't be that big.
Right. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
They don't feel the need to explain it to us.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
This may be one where we have to wait for the... Yeah, I was going to say, we may have to wait for the development communities, the awesome communities of developers out there to beat on this thing and then tell us what it does.
Or Point Free to just come out with a library for us that does what we want.
Yeah. Yeah, even better. Save me the trouble, please. Yeah.
We've got SwiftUI Charts. Yeah. That looks awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm really happy to see that.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
That's going to be, I'm going to have a lot of fun with that, honestly. There's a lot you can do there.
I thought of you when I saw that. I thought, I saw
visual
this and I
data
thought,
stuff. Or our previous guest, Majid, who does a ton of great health apps. Like this is going to be his cup of tea.
Oh,
so I don't know. Yeah. I don't have a lot to say other than it's cool. I'm like looking forward to playing around with it.
Yeah, absolutely. When they mentioned this, this is one of those things I never even thought about. And as soon as they said it, I thought, this is perfect. Because I'm going to go down memory lane here. I worked on a dashboard app back in Adobe Flex, if anyone remembers that.
It's still around,
Flex
isn't
was
it?
like the serious... I think it is in a different context, something like that. But I used it. I was using it to work on an enterprise level dashboard. And we had to buy a super expensive set of extra components for charts. But this became the thing that everyone wanted to look at because it was so cool looking, but also easy to use. And so when they said today about the charts, immediately I thought, oh gosh, yeah, I mean, think of any statistical app out there, throw it in a chart. And I was thinking of you, Heartwitch, and and I was thinking of, some of the other apps, like any sleep app, some of the David Smith's apps, all those kind of things. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are going to have a field day with this.
Yes, exactly.
The charts. And now we're talking, and this was my other thing too. I thought, wait a minute, if you can make this work on the server side with something like, say, Swift Vapor, or Vapor Swift, whichever one it is, and you can make that work, and we're now talking Swift-based charts in a Swift-based web app, I mean, now we're talking a whole other level of dashboards,
Yeah, exactly.
So I actually think this is a way bigger deal than it looks on the surface. Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Plus, it made for a great demo in the video on the iPad. I mean, it was fantastic.
Apple
demo.
knows their stuff when it comes to data visualization and like making it look good. And that's what's important with specifically that kind of stuff, telling a story with data.
Yep.
Anything else developer-wise before we close out?
I've already downloaded, just quickly, I just want to say I've downloaded Xcode on 14.
Okay.
Because there was one thing, I just want to say, and none of us have really got into the details of Xcode yet, but there was one thing that caught my attention in the State of the Union video that I thought was fantastic and so easily missed. Because maybe for most people, it's not a thing. For me, it's a thing. Did you notice as they were scrolling through code, how the function name was sticking at the top of the editor window?
No, that's nice.
Go back and check that.
I gotta
because I'm not kidding. I mean, how many times have we all been there? You're like, what function am I in? Where am I at? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is such a subtle little thing that can change my world. So I do want to mention that. I'm sure there's a million other things in Xcode, but that was the one I saw in the State of the Union, and I thought, oh yes.
So many videos coming out tomorrow. What was I going to say? There was something.
Oh,
else.
so many sessions. Have you gone through?
Yes, I marked it. I marked
sessions yet.
Way too many sessions. Bookmarked them. Okay. Here's a question for you. Actually, one other thing I want to talk about that they mentioned that I have no clue, but I know is a big deal, and a lot of people have been interested in this, especially in the surfer community. Distributed actors. Do you have any idea how that stuff works?
Yeah.
You do?
So I'm not, basically what they told us, if I interpreted it correctly in the State of the Union, and I know they gave us actors before now,
right.
And I hadn't used them just because I hadn't needed to.
Right.
But I sort of grokked it a bit better when they said about the distributed actors. And I started in my brain separating these out. And again, like we were saying, the async await stuff, right? It's like, oh, yeah, wait, I can have, it was one thing when they started saying about, okay, you've got these distributed actors and here they are, and here's your, here's one actor, think of it as a block, and here's another actor, and so on. And then they started saying about how actors can talk to each other, but also, perhaps more interestingly, is remote actors.
Yes.
And so you can have an act, and that caught my attention.
Yeah.
And I thought, ooh, that's a thing.
Tim Condon,
so
who's
what do
been
you think
on and
that?
he helps manage the Vapor project along with that team, and he's talked a lot about distributed actors, so I think he's been a big fan of it, and I think folks like that are going to be really happy to see that.
Yeah.
I'm really curious how it works out, because I haven't grokked the actors. I get the idea kind of, but I haven't really grokked it, and then I have not touched distributed actors at all. So
now this felt like a thing that was a good excuse to go back and go, okay, you know what? I'm just going to come up with some scenario where I need to use this to play with it. Because I know some of the live stream folks that I like to watch their live streams and that, and we sort of hang out in each other's streams. And they were talking about in the coming days, taking some of, we should take these new APIs and play with them on a stream. And then I thought, oh, this, distributed actors might be my thing.
Yeah.
Because I can go in knowing absolutely nothing and then relate that to things that would be useful.
Yep.
So I'm very interested. And you're quite right. On a server side, if this can work on
I think they specifically
mentioned way of
too.
keeping resource usage.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then that'd be great, because now you can also, you're not locking up things on the server and probably using less resources.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. And maybe where that's going to take us in the future, this may be the start of something else, right?
Right.
Distributed whatever next year. I think it'll be interesting.
What any other quirky little API you're interested in looking at that you saw in the developer app that you might delve into?
I was going through here. There are some APIs that I think, like I said at the beginning, I think we got a lot more this year than at least they mentioned in previous years. I think the messaging one is an interesting one,
right?
To make sharing across devices and everything else, and with people, and kind of a collaboration. Feels like that's a new area of attention for them, right? This whole collaboration across devices. So the APIs there are going to be interesting to see how that works, because you've got to figure that it's got to be open but sandboxed at the same time.
Right. Yep.
So those will be interesting to read into. And I'm pretty sure I think there were some sessions on that as well. So, yeah. So
one thing that I saw that a couple of things I'm interested in. I've been really deep diving into virtualization. There's a whole virtualization framework. I've tweeted about it a little bit, building a VM app.
Yeah.
But they have a talk tomorrow, June 7th, on that. So I might see if there's anything new there.
I think I bookmarked that one.
It's surprising.
Is that the one where they were saying about, there's one that was like a virtualization of Mac OS and Linux or something like that.
That one, exactly.
Is that the one?
Yeah, and that framework is already out. It's been out since Apple Silicon's been out. So I'm curious what's new, if anything, this year.
And I must have completely missed it because I thought it was new.
Yeah.
And then I read it, I'm like, oh, how did I miss
Yeah.
that?
There's a meat transferable.
Stop giving me too many things, Apple.
There's a meat transferable protocol. I don't know what that is, and I don't know what it means, but I'm curious what that has to do with. I think it has something to do with collaboration and stuff like that. So that might be interesting. And then there was one other thing I wanted to mention before closing out. I don't know. I think actually that was it. I mean, I'm interested in building a Mac app. So I might look at some of the app kit talks that are coming out this year. There are app kit talks and figuring that whole narrative and how that works with SwiftUI. And then anything with health and fitness, I'm going to be there. So what other talks are you going to be?
And I could be wrong.
What?
I don't think you've made a Mac app so far, right? Or certainly not published.
Well,
anyway.
Speculated, but
am I wrong?
Oh,
sorry. Yes. Well, I think of that as more
that's
of
a zombie
command line utility because I'm
right. Eventually,
I'm a big fan of that.
Eventually,
from
I'll
command
get to
line
it.
days. Yeah.
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 How about you?
But this would be an interesting tie-in for you because you could write. So I'm going to set you a challenge. Here's what I'm going to do. You can take the data from your HealthRich app into a Mac OS app with the SwiftUI charts. Right? That's something.
Yeah, with Heart Twitch?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That does sound cool.
Something to think about.
Something to think about. How about you?
Yeah.
What talks are you looking at this week?
Oh, so many. So actually, you know what? Give me 1 second here. I'm gonna read off the list. I'm gonna open up the developer app. So first of all, I feel the need to confess and get this off my shoulders. I have finally this morning, after the keynote, went through and unbookmarked all of the WWDC talks that I had bookmarked pre-2020.
They don't let you multi-select. I want to multi-select and unbookmark them, and they won't let you. So mine are still in there.
Yeah, one by one.
You had to do it one by one. That's a lot of work.
I did, yeah. And so, for example, I no longer feel the need to watch the one that says introducing SwiftUI. I think I'm beyond that.
Let's see what I got. Let's see what my first one is. Advanced NS operations. What's new in core data? What's new in storyboards? Protocol-oriented programming. This is all 2015, 2016. So yeah, fun stuff. iTunes Connect. Development to distribution. Great. Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, you can let that
go. What are you?
Well, I'm looking at my oldest one here. My oldest one is, get this, I should just kill this off. This is one of those where it's like, because I've never watched it, June of 2016, protocol and value-oriented programming in UIKit apps. I should probably just remove that from the list.
Beautiful.
Point, right? But from this year, things that have caught my attention. So I'll go down sort of my list quickly here. A lot of the what's new in ones, Swift and all of those things, Xcode, particularly the Xcode one. But I do have some here. Sure enough, like you say, the virtual machines. And I'm going to bring this up just briefly. Don't want to make this a big topic, but because I'm curious. And I think we spoke about this earlier. I tagged a few of the Unity ones because strange that's a thing, So I've got those in there. But I do have, like you say, the SwiftUI cookbook for navigation to try and
see what they're doing there.
What this is about. Yeah, of course, the Meet Swift regex. I mean, that's a given. There's one that has me curious on the iPad. Exactly what this means. Adopt desktop class editing interaction.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing like desktop experience on the iPad. So yeah, that's part of that narrative.
Yeah. So I want to see what that's about. Of course, the charts one, the weather kit one, because I mean, it's just a great API, right? Let's see. There is one that has me curious, and maybe you've looked into this, got more details. It's like, what is that even about? Get to know developer mode.
Yes, I saw
Did you see that one.
Meet developer
Yeah,
mode
apparently on your
required
iPhone, you've
iOS
gotta turn it
16,
on.
iPad 16, Watch 9 to install, run, and debug your apps during development. We'll show you how to opt into developer mode on your devices and how to enable developer mode in your automation workflows. Can I throw something out?
Yeah.
Is
Please.
this a way to do development for a iPhone without any sort of port to it?
Oh,
Does that make sense?
hadn't thought about it. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way because mine was just a big question mark of what and why.
I feel like this is they're dipping their toes into,
Interesting.
guess what? You're not going to have a way to hook up the iPhone to your computer. We
Yeah.
created developer
Well, actually,
mode for
so
you.
here's the first thing. So I'll say this: if it means stop, and you all know what, if
Say
anyone
it.
that follows me on
Say
Twitter,
it.
you know where I'm going.
Say it.
If I don't have to have Xcode prepare my Apple Watch 50 times a day, that's the price of entry right there. And in fact, I even posted on Twitter a tweet for this. Hope I don't get in trouble with Apple. When I installed the Xcode 14 beta, the first thing that comes up is a new window.
Yeah, I saw that.
Asking me which frameworks.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I didn't install the WatchOS one, and it didn't prepare my Apple Watch. So maybe they were thinking, look, we see you all complaining, we can't stop it. Let's just have a non-developer mode for everything.
Yeah. Because you don't have
that's
to
worth
download
the price of entry.
You
to
don't
me.
have to download the WatchOS framework. So technically you could.
Nope.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't tried that yet.
We'll see.
I
but-
downloaded Xcode
Yeah,
and
well-
have expanded the archive. My Mac Studio is fast, but it's not that fast. Downloads still take a while. So I haven't like really played
Yep.
around the Xcode 14, but hopefully in the next episode I will.
No, me neither. I just booted it up because it was like, is there some new interface? I will say the download was only like 8 gigs something, and it installed in no time. The unzip and so on. So I was impressed with that.
It is
I was
impressive.
Like, well, even if you just fix that,
Yeah.
looking down, there's some other charts ones, designing app experiences, all of those kind of things. The one that does, I don't think I've ever done this right. So one that I'm curious about, use Xcode to develop a multi-platform app.
Okay.
Because I think I've always done it wrong.
Okay.
And I want to see what they have to tell me.
Okay.
Yeah. And also this one just sounds interesting. Meet the expanded San Francisco font family, just to see what they did there.
Oh, I didn't see that one. That's cool.
Yeah. So maybe that's on the 8th. Maybe there's some new fonts. How they have those different
frameworks
versions.
is amazing.
Maybe this.
They have got a couple of talks in Arabic, which I like. I was raised on the Arabic language, so I don't know it, but I was raised on it.
But yeah,
so that looks really cool. The whole right to left thing and stuff that they're really adopting looks awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then there's compose custom layouts with SwiftUI. So maybe that's the one that's going to answer all of our questions.
Yes. Yeah.
With that, that is definitely going to be interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, as you mentioned, there is one on distributed actors as well.
Yep.
So
yeah, definitely people should take advantage of the labs and the Slacks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is your chance to talk to an Apple developer. Do it. That to me is way more important than watching these videos. These videos are great, but they'll be around till the end of time. Probably Death of the Universe, I would imagine. So definitely like that. If you have a question for an Apple dev, register for those sessions. Do it. Yeah, you have to install WebEx, but it's worth it. I think it's probably still WebEx. At least it's not Teams.
Yeah.
So
well, and I still have issues with that because I think you and I maybe mentioned this before. It's like, Apple, why are you not using your own FaceTime technology? What's up with that? You'd think they'd use their own perfectly usable FaceTime, but I don't know.
Yeah, right.
What about you? Is there any other? I mean, I got like an endless list, I think, but is there anything else that jumps out at you?
No, I think I went over my spiel. Just kind of like, yeah. I think I went over what I'm going to do. I joined the Slack. I'm looking forward to playing with some of this, and probably some of it will crash, but it'll still be cool to see. I think there's some good opportunities here for devs as far as what's out there.
For me, just playing with a lot of the SwiftUI stuff is going to be interesting, since, I spend a lot of my time on my streams with that, and people seem to be interested in this, as they should be. I did notice, as I was looking down my list here, there was some that I forgot to mention, but one in particular, use Xcode for server-side development. I want to see what that's about. Like, what do you mean by that, Apple?
Where is that?
That's going to be an interesting one. This is on June the 10th. Let me read the thing here. Discover how you can create, build, and deploy a Swift server app alongside your pre-existing Xcode projects with the same workspace. We'll show you how to create your own local app and test endpoints using Xcode and explore how, you can structure and share code between server and client. That'll be interesting. Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention before we close out?
No, I think we've had so much. Really, just a phenomenal year. I feel this year a lot more enthused going in than last year. Not to say that last year was disappointing, but I just want to jump on this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be talking with Evan Stone.
Nice.
He'll be on the next episode. So if there's anything you see here that we did not cover, send me a DM. No, tweet at me. Let me know if you have anything else you want me to talk about when it comes to WWDC. Hopefully I get this episode out as soon as possible. We'll see. But I'm always happy to have you on, Peter. This has been great. This is our almost.
Thank you.
Is it bi-yearly or semi-annually? I forget. It's semi-annually because I think you come on every 6 months. So yeah. Peter, you have the podcast Compile Swift. You're at compileswift.com.
Correct.
Your Twitter's Compile Swift.
Yeah, Compile Swift.
Where are your live?
I try to make Compile Swift everywhere.
Where's your live streams?
Yeah. So there's two ways you can get to them. There's one which is compileswift.live.
Okay.
But primarily it's a Twitch stream. So you can go to, like twitch.tv/CompileSwift and find it there. That's where we do the live streams. We have a fantastic chat room, and I want to give a quick shout out to them. Part of the reason that I love doing the live streams so much is we have very knowledgeable developers in there, and something that I'm very dear to my heart. So many people come in there and say, I want to get started with this stuff. And and I always say to them, great, ask as many questions as you want. I'm sure you're the same deal, Leo. Every time someone says, I want to get started with this stuff, it's like, fantastic. That's exactly what we need. More people in the community. But that's what the live stream is all about. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else you want to plug?
And just to say, no, it's always a pleasure to come on and talk with you. And, I'm not just saying it because I'm here, but, because as I was listening to your podcast way before you and I even met. Just, again, the interviews that you've been doing, just fantastic.
Thank you.
Really feel like I'm sort of sitting as a third person in the room listening to you both talk. And it's, it's fascinating. It kind of sometimes it has those developer, that saying that they say, like the NPR driveway moment, where you're like, I got to do a thing, but I want to stop and listen to the end of this. And I have that with your podcast when you're doing the interviews. It's like, no, I've got to hear this before I move on to my next thing, So thank you for all the content you put out there. It's fantastic.
I appreciate it. We'll have to put like a Peter dummy in the back or something. Maybe. I don't know. So you can actually be that third person.
That's it, yeah. And just sort of move it on a wire every so often. Just people like, is he okay?
Right, exactly. Did you get a chance to plug everything, Peter?
Yeah, no, that's me. If you go to Compile Swift, you'll find me out there somewhere.
And like I said, if you were
that's all my app development.
If you made the foolish mistake to listen to this episode before listening to the one we did on the keynote, that's okay, I guess. There's no spoilers, but you probably should go back and listen to that episode we just released. Peter, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
People can find me
on
Twitter at LeoGDion. My company is Bright Digit. go check out brightdigit.com, where I post all the latest newsletters, articles, podcast episodes there, also on YouTube. And so if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to this on your favorite podcast player, please take some time and post a review. I'd really appreciate this. Retweet your favorite thing you've learned, or tweet at me if there's something you want me to ask Evan. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you later more about WWDC. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.